My name is Jon Ceci. This is my second semester at Moorpark, um, and my major is business marketing. And the person I did my slides on is Carolyn Herschel or Caroline Herschel. Some of her background. Caroline was born in Germany and lived from 1750 until 1848, so she lived until she was 97, which is quite uncommon for people of her time, as their medicine wasn't as advanced, so they all died a lot sooner. They also moved later to England. Her and her brother William Herschel, who was another famous astronomer, they moved to England to pursue a music career, which I'll talk about a little bit about later. She is also considered a pioneer in the field of astronomy for women, as there were very few women who were educated for astronomy during her time. It was a field that not a lot of women had a lot of general interest in, mainly because at the time, house being like the keeper of the household was what a lot of women traditionally found their time doing. Her parents were against her pursuing education and instead wanted her to focus on the household duties. This was mainly her mom who wanted this for her. Later I'll talk about she was diagnosed with typhus, or she caught typhus when she was 10, which weakened her immune system. So her parents actually wanted her to continue with the household activities just because it was a little bit safer for her to stay inside, not really go about, I suppose, like learning and pursuing education. Carolyn was originally appointed an assistant to her brother William, who was the court astronomer. So after their time going to England and pursuing a music career, where Carolyn was actually going to be a singer and her brother was a music teacher, they found that they enjoyed astronomy a lot during their free time. Her brother William was later appointed by the king, the court astronomer, and Carolyn spent a lot of time helping her brother as his assistant. And then she was actually later appointed by the king himself as a paid salary assistant. Some of her education. Caroline lacked formal education and was taught math and English by her brother William. She lacked the formal education, as I said earlier, a little bit about mainly her parents didn't want her to pursue a lot of education. When she actually lived with William, a lot of what she did was pursuing a little bit of her music career, but also spent a lot of time household activities because they lived together, maintaining a lot of his house. Um, Much of her learning about astronomy was gained during her time as her brother's assistant. So again, she had no formal training or any formal education, so she picked up a lot of what she learned about astronomy sort of while they worked together. So it was really informal training. Through her brother, Caroline was able to learn a lot about astronomy to the point where she was almost just as knowledgeable as a formally educated person. Um, she wasn't as knowledgeable, obviously, as a formally educated person. There's a lot of things she didn't know, but her brother, who was more educated in astronomy, was able to pass on a lot of knowledge to her, and she was able to learn a surprisingly good amount about it, to where she was able to make her own discoveries later on. Some of her contributions. Caroline was the first woman to discover a comet. This was in 1876. Um, she became the world's first professional female astronomer. And you see she had a salary of 50, whatever that symbol is. So this is again when the king appointed her as her brother William's official assistant. This made her the world's first professional female astronomer because she now had a salary from the king. This opened the doors for other women. So her being a woman and becoming the first professional female astronomer showed a lot of women that there was in fact an opening for them. While it would be a little bit difficult, it was still possible for women to pursue this if they really enjoyed it enough. It was something they were very passionate about. They would face, a little bit difficulties, but it was definitely possible. Um, Although it was, I believe I also saw when I was looking her up and researching, it was 150 years after she received a reward that another woman received the same reward or another reward in astronomy. So it did take a while for other women to follow, but she definitely helped open up the door for them. 1798, she presented a catalog of 560 stars to the Royal Society, which is basically the scientific society of that time, that had been left out of John Flamsteed's catalog. So he had a catalog before that had omitted 560 stars that they still hadn't found, and she later presented those stars as findings to update his catalog. As her brother's assistant, Caroline can take credit for a large part of her brother William's discoveries. including his findings of the planet Uranus. So as his assistant, she helped him a lot with all of his work. So she's definitely able to take part credit for a lot of her brother's discoveries. William, her brother, was also a famous astronomer. Some of her challenges she faced, mainly in the area of astronomy. As a woman in a predominantly male field at the time, Caroline did have to deal with some social issues that came along with that. Obviously, being a pioneer is never easy. So, being the first woman in a field that wasn't really particularly seen for women, something they'd be interested in. It was difficult to have to deal with some maybe the stigma. I don't know what you would call that. That the men had seen. Caroline was also afflicted by typhus when she was only 10 years old, which halted her growth. So she was actually only 4'3" throughout her life, and also presented her with some other health issues throughout her life, not healthy health. Some other facts. Caroline originally was pursuing a career in music, as I said earlier, along with her brother, William. The both of them eventually transitioned their career to astronomy when William was appointed the court astronomer. So while their original passion was music, they spent a lot of their free time looking at the stars and just casually exploring it. And then later did become a career for her brother, and she followed him as the assistant, and then later her own career. Caroline had 9 siblings in her family, so she came from 10 total children, I think. And some other accomplishments. Caroline received an honorary membership to the Royal Society. She also received a reward from them as well. In 1783, her and William began to compile a list of new stars and nebula, which they completed 20 years later. So it was a long list, and it took a long time for them to compile all those. But it resulted in 2,500 new stars and nebula, or new findings, and their list was added into the new general catalog, along with other findings from other astronomers to create the new general catalog. And Caroline spotted a total of 8 different comets in her lifetime, some of which were named after her. So there was that first one she discovered, which was the first comet any woman had ever discovered. And then after that, she found 7 others, some of which have her name to them. And that is all. Thank you for your time.